What I'd like to do now, if you all would permit me, is check to see if Bob Jones really meant what he said about how he's changed his mind about gays is bad and stuff, and take a look at the rule book for Bob Jones University and see exactly what they think about the queer community and their students participating in it. So this is pulled straight from the student handbook of Bob Jones University. I'm going to read a few excerpts from it here. Their position on human sexuality. Just reading that's very strange. I can't imagine that any organization needs a position on human sexuality. Like, why would that have to be brought up at all? But it says the New Testament exhorts believers to strive to live morally pure and sexually undefiled lives, even in the midst of an immoral and sexually permissive culture. Therefore, any sexual activity outside the context of a biblically defined marriage between one man and one woman is permitted. By the way, the Bible nowhere says that marriage is defined between one man and woman. It's not there. Try to find it. You won't. Additionally, so the closest thing you can find to that, just so anyone's wondering, is that you can find in the New Testament description of who gets to be a bishop. It says a bishop should be one man, the man of one wife. That's it. You can't find any law where, and look at the Old Testament patriarchs, they all had dozens of wives, like all the time. Which is God never said one word about that. But all right. Additionally, any sexual behavior that is inconsistent with these standards, including sexual intercourse, other sexually intimate forms of touching and sexual communication in written, verbal, or visual form, is prohibited when consensual. Consistent with our commitment to God's commitment for gender identity, because of course they had to do this, the public advocacy for or act of altering one's biological sex through medical transition or transgender expression is prohibited. Any same-sex dating or advocacy for such is also prohibited. BJU's perspective on gender identity also applies to, but is not limited to, the use of bathrooms, locker rooms, student housing, attire policies, and participating in same-sex or in sex-specific university groups, clubs, and organizations. So, I just very specific on this, that they had to go out of their way to make sure that trans people are not allowed at their school. Like that's what it says, right? Am I reading that incorrectly? I imagine that wasn't an issue back in the day, but now it might be. But even this current day, they want to let you know that that's not cool. And let's see, did that go down here?
It's where they come after the advocacy for me as well, because it goes into such a, it's not only coming at people like homosexuals, but it's also just coming at people for thinking. How do you chalk that up to anything else, or to expressing themselves, like freedom of speech? I put it, that verbiage just drives me nuts. I don't know.
Yeah. You can't support the gay community either. You can't do it. You can't advocate for it. Like that's wild. Context for human sexuality. Human sexuality is part of God's divine design for human beings. However, the Bible restricts all forms of consensual sexual activity to within the boundaries of marriage relationships. The Bible clearly prohibits not only non-consensual sexual misconduct in Deuteronomy 22, 25 through 27, and we are going to check out that passage. So that's why I underlined it. We're going to get to that passage. Therefore, we believe that to intentionally alter or change one's physical gender to live as a gender other than the one assigned at conception is to reject God's right as a creator to assign gender to his creatures, and is personal rejection of his plan to glorify himself through the original gender he assigned that individual. Now, I highlighted that paragraph because it jumped out at me for this reason. It says that we believe that to intentionally alter or change one's physical gender or to live as a gender other than the one assigned at conception is to reject God. And that doesn't make sense for two reasons. The first reason is that you have no gender at conception because gender is an expression. Like you have your biological sex, that's more or less immutable. I have XY chromosomes, like I have male gametes, but my gender is my choice. Like if I want to be a female, I can. Like I mean that doesn't change my sex, but my gender does change. But in this instance, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they're using the word sex as gender. Well, that doesn't work either, because I remember learning in biology class that we all start out as females. Like at conception, you are a female. Like everyone is. Like you males don't become males until you get like your testosterone wash like several weeks into gestation. Am I incorrect about this? Like, did you guys learn that as well?
I do think that's true. I think so. I know
Yeah.
It sounds right.
or been taught it, read it somewhere.
Yeah, it's why we all have nipples, because like men don't need them. There's no reason they're there, but they're vestiges from back when we were female, when we started out. So in that case, I guess they would have to, if just following the, what they wrote here, they would have to accept men becoming women, which is what they're really worried about. So they're the ones that they're actually concerned with. So that one did crack me up. So I wanted to talk about Deuteronomy 22. So they mentioned Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses, I think, 22 through 25, I think is what it was, as the basis for one of their laws, because they mentioned, sexual impropriety. And in Deuteronomy 22, you have like a bunch of random verses up top that talk about, if you see a fellow Israelite's donkey on the road, you should help him get it on its feet. Do not wear clothes of wool and linen together, stuff like that, just random stuff here and there. But then you get to marriage violations. That's what we're going to go over here. That's what the second part of the chapter is about. So these are these are the verses they referenced in the rule book. So they're basing their rules on Deuteronomy chapter 22. So let's see what it says. It says, if a man is found sleeping with another man's wife, both the man who slept with her and the woman must die. You must purge that evil from Israel. If a man happens to meet in town a virgin pledged to be married and sleeps with her, you shall take both of them to the gate of that town and stone them to death. The young woman, because she was in town and did not scream for help, and the man, because he violated another man's wife. You must purge the evil from among you. But if out in the country a man happens to meet a young woman pledged to be married and rapes her, only the man who has done this shall die. Do nothing to the woman. She has committed no sin deserving death. This case is like that of someone who attacks and murders a neighbor. For the man found the young woman in the country, and though the betrothed woman screamed, there was no one to rescue her. So what's going on here is that in verse 23, it talks about a man raping a virgin, and she doesn't scream for help. If she doesn't scream, she gets executed along with her rapist. If a man rapes a woman and she does scream for help, only the rapist gets executed. And that's I don't see how that comports at all with what Bob Jones wrote down. I mean, I read the rules there. Did you guys catch anything about executing people that commit anything like that? Did I miss it?
She didn't.
And I want to go a little bit further with this too, because everything that's written here is written about a woman who is one of three things. She is a virgin, she is married, or she is engaged. She's some combination of those three. And so you might be wondering, well, what about a woman who wasn't one of those three? Well, I'm glad you asked. So if a man happens to meet a virgin who is not engaged or not pledged to be married and rapes her and they are discovered, he shall pay her father 50 shekels of silver. And get this, he must marry the young woman, for he has violated her. He can never divorce her as long as he lives. So if, according to what Bob Jones wants, apparently, if a woman is a virgin and she's raped, the crime is not against the woman. The crime is against her father, because he has now devalued his investment of this girl that he can't get any money off of because she's no longer a virgin. And after this is done, the rapist's punishment is to pay her father whatever 50 shekels of silver works out to today. And he has to marry her. She has to marry the rapist. And good news, it's illegal to divorce her, to divorce him. So yeah, I don't know if that's what Bob Jones wants, but that's what's written there. And I'm gonna close it out with what's written right before what Bob Jones cited as the basis for their rules. If a man takes a wife and after sleeping with her dislikes her and slanders her and gives her a bad name, saying, I married this woman, but when I approached her, I did not find proof of her virginity. Now, if any of you listening out there are wondering, well, how would he have proof that she's a virgin? Well, the answer is a bloody sheet. That's how you know she's a virgin. Like, if she doesn't bleed when you consummate the marriage on the wedding night, you can essentially charge her father with fraud because he gave you an impure wife. So, where was I right here? Oh yeah. Then the young woman's father and mother shall bring to the town elders at the gate proof that she was virgin. Now, if you're wondering, like, what would the proof be? The proof would be the bloody sheet. And that's what they would need to show everyone in town. Her father will say to the elders, I gave my daughter in marriage to this man, but he dislikes her. Now he has slandered her and said, I did not find your daughter to be a virgin, but here is the proof of my daughter's virginity. Then her parents shall display the cloth, the bloody sheet, before the elders of the town. And the elders shall take the man and punish him. They shall fine him 100 shekels of silver and give them to the young woman's father. Once again, the woman doesn't even get paid for that. She gets slandered, publicly and legally, and still the money goes to her father because that's who the crime is actually against. Because this man has given an Israelite virgin a bad name. She shall continue to be his wife, and once again, he cannot divorce her as long as he lives. If, however, the charge is true and no proof of the woman's virginity can be found, which I say for the third time, the proof of her virginity is her bleeding the first time she has sex with him. If she broke her hymen riding a horse or anything somewhere along the line, she shall be brought to the door of her father's house, and the men of her town will stone her to death. So if a guy lies about her being a virgin, he has to pay a fine. If she actually isn't a virgin, she is executed. She has done an outrageous thing in Israel by being promiscuous while in our father's house. You must purge this evil from you. So this is why it bothers me whenever I see like Bob Jones University trying to do this stuff by saying, well, we have to follow these sexual commands of the Old Testament, and here's our reference for it. And then you look up the reference, you're like, you're not following any of this. You picked like one line out of this entire chapter and built an entire paradigm of sexuality on it. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think that's very cool.
I don't either.
But I feel like that's a theme throughout all the IFB.
Yes.
Is like they take one, like they don't look at the context. They take one verse and they say X, Y, and Z, and then they don't look at the before or the after, like the verse before it or the after it, and they're just like, nope, this is it, and then they like derail from there.
Not only that, like they will take one sentence, that too, section of a scripture verse, and they will build an entire, sermon based around that one little thing, and they'll say they're doing it. I'm just going off this one, or I'm going to preach to you today about, whatever it is, the last portion of Psalm 183, whatever, and that they'll focus on that sentence. And there's so many different ways you can interpret language. They're so and they ride that very often from the pulpit.
Oh yeah.
And I remember
youth pastors do it a lot too. Like youth pastors try to make it cool, and they'll be like, I bet you didn't know this was about this. Well, I'm going to teach you about it tonight. Mic drop. And all the kids are like, what? Whoa.
With questions, like youth pastors losing control of the youth settings very often, just because us as teens, we were asking questions, like literally, like, why wouldn't she bleed the first time? And then these teachers, youth pastors, whatever they were, not being able to stand on or even scientifically answer those questions or medically answer those questions. And then, us teens just roasting them, like taking it from there because we, we're teens. We kind of were figuring that stuff out on our own and, whatever.
Yeah.
We had to figure that out on our own because we weren't really allowed to ask questions about anything that had to do with sexuality or even like our reproductive health. I remember I was a teenager on Facebook just talking about things, and I had a complaint just about like cramps or something, and I had a parent come up to me the next day at church and be like, you don't need to be talking about that stuff. I'm like, what? They're like, that's kind of inappropriate. Like that stuff shouldn't be spoken about. Just drop it next time. Okay. I'm like, okay. So it was all seen as taboo.
Mhm.
Yet
Mhm.
when they preach about it and say wild things to us that make us go, what? We still can't even question it because that's a sin.
Yeah, yeah. I would have more respect for them if they actually just did say this. Like, so when Bob Jones said that, yeah, I believe gays should be executed. Yeah, all right, okay. I mean, you're taking like an actual verse and going with it what it says, but they're cowards. Like they're cowards. They're like, yeah, we're just gonna take this part here and ignore literally everything else just a part. It's like what Kayla that you brought up is like ignoring the eating shellfish thing. Like you can find 1,000 commandments in the Old Testament that nobody follows, like nobody at all. But that's just convenient. Oh yeah, well, but the gay stuff, yeah, that's important. We need to follow that one. Like that's an absolute. And it's just like there's no consistency in it. And the only consistent part is like, and what really bothers me is when they say that this is all about love because the only love they're interested in is tough love. That's the only love that has any value at all. It's like, oh yeah, you're an abomination, you're a sinner, you deserve hell, but I'm only saying this because I love you. Don't you understand? Like God loves you just like I do, which is why I need to tell you that you are living an awful life. You're a terrible human being, but all our sin is the same. But come on, you know what's going on here. I'm in the superior position because I'm amongst God's favorite, His chosen, and it's just the amount of times we saw that on any number of issues growing up. It's not surprising to me that the movement is shrinking, but not fast enough, if you ask me. But